Hi, and welcome to the Caterpillar Cross Stitch YouTube channel. My name is Ford, and this week I'm going to be going over some of the most commonly misused and misunderstood terms in the cross stitch dictionary. Now, as with any subculture, and don't get it twisted, cross stitching is definitely a subculture, we have our own language. We have our own jargon that we use for things, and sometimes those can get a little bit confused, especially with similar terminology that crosses over with other crafts. So I'm going to talk about a few of the ones that I see people confused about most frequently, which cause breakdowns in communication when people are trying to share knowledge. And I'm going to save the one that I find the most fun for the very last, so make sure you stick around for that. Now, if you've ever learned anything from any of my videos, or if you just find me entertaining, take just a second right now and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment down below. It doesn't cost you anything other than a few seconds worth of time, but it makes a really big difference for me and a big difference for the channel. So I'd really appreciate it if you would take just a moment and do that. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about is one that we have made the mistake of even in the past on this very channel, and that is a 1/4 stitch. I'm going to talk about the difference between a 1/4 stitch and a 3/4 stitch so that if you're reading the notes on a pattern in future and it calls for one or the other, you'll know exactly what they mean. So if you think of a cross stitch, a full X stitch, as being two lines that bisect each other, that's how you get your X or your cross. Now, each one of those little half length lines that is created by that bisection, that is a 1/4 of a stitch. You can also think of it in terms of how many of the holes in the fabric the stitch uses. So a full cross stitch would normally use 4 holes in the fabric. Here, take a look. If I'm going to make a full cross stitch, my needle is going to cross through the fabric 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the needle goes through the fabric at 4 different places using 4 different little holes. So each one of those holes is basically 1/4 of the stitch. So if we're making a 1/4 stitch, we're only going to use one of the holes in the fabric. But in order to get the floss back down to the other side, we're going to have to make a new hole. So basically a 1/4 stitch is going to use one of the 4 holes that you would normally use, and then it's going to go pass back down through the fabric in between the spaces. So I've got a row of 4 little 1/4 stitches here. So if you think of it in terms of holes in the fabric, each one is only using one of the existing holes. Or if you think of it in terms of the line segments, each one is only 1/4 of the full cross. So now in comparison, if we do a 3/4 stitch, we're going to use 3 of the existing holes in the fabric. Make sure you check out my video on 3/4 stitches, which should be right here, for some tips and tricks on how to do these and have them look good. But these are 3/4 stitches. Now, I've left an empty stitch in between each one of these, which you wouldn't normally do, just in order to be able to tell them apart. But we've got a 1/2 stitch plus a 1/4 stitch, a 1/2 stitch plus a 1/4 stitch. So a 1/2 plus a 1/4, going back to 6th grade math, is 3/4, right? So we're using a 3/4 stitch here. So sometimes people will confuse the terminology for these two. And in fact, that was what we did. We said 1/4 stitch when we meant 3/4 stitch. And I think that the source of the confusion there is that each of these stitches kind of divides the square into quadrants. You've got your lower left, your upper right, and your lower right. I made each of these in the same order so that they kind of rotate clockwise. So it's dividing the square that the stitch occupies into 3 different quadrants, and I think those quadrants are what causes that confusion for a lot of people. But if you just kind of think of an X as actually being 4 short line segments, and think of how many you're doing, 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them, you'll know whether you're doing a 1/4 stitch, a 1/2 stitch, a 3/4 stitch, or a full stitch. I'm going to take just a second right now to remind you to join the Caterpillar Cross Stitch Stitch Club newsletter email. When you sign up, you'll get an instant download of 9 free cross stitch patterns, including a year-long temperature tracker pattern. You'll also get advance notice of any upcoming stitch-alongs, retreats, socials, those kinds of things, and all of the latest Caterpillar news. And you'll get a download of our top 10 cross-stitching tips as well. So make sure you hit the link down there in the description and in the first comment so that you don't miss out on any of that. So the next that we're going to talk about is more of a matter of specificity than it is necessarily a matter of being incorrect. Frequently, you'll hear cross-stitchers refer to any straight line outlining stitch that's used to outline full cross stitches as a back stitch, just because that's the terminology that they hear most frequently. But a back stitch is a specific technique of completing that outline stitching, and it consists pretty much of each of your stitches when it is on the surface of the fabric. Like if you think of each stitch, it has sort of two components. It has this part that's on top of the fabric, and it has the part that's underneath the fabric. The part on top I'm going to call the facing stitch, and the part underneath I'm going to call the return stitch. So with a back stitch, your facing stitch moves backwards relative to the direction that your line is progressing across the fabric. So that means that for each one of those stitches, underneath you're going to go forward 2 stitches, and then on top you're going to go backward 1 stitch. So it's sort of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And that's why it's called a back stitch, is because it actually goes backwards relative to the direction of the fabric. This technique tends to result in a very clean and tidy line, but there are other ways to achieve that outline stitch that have their own advantages. One would be what's called a running stitch. Now, another similar way to achieve a straight line stitch that works especially well if you're doing black work is what's known as a Holbein stitch. And the Holbein stitch is basically a running stitch, but you do it twice. So with a Holbein stitch, you go, forward 1 or 2 squares on the fabric underneath, forward 1 or 2 squares on the fabric on top, forward 1 or 2 squares on the fabric underneath, and then either go back with the opposites, or just go all the way around your figure again, but with your thread in the opposite place, top or bottom. The thing about the Holbein stitch, and the reason it's used very often for doing black work, is that it looks exactly the same on the top and on the bottom. So a lot of times when I'm talking about one of my tips or techniques, like when I'm talking about assembling a biscornu, I'll say use a true back stitch, because it does make a difference in how the thread runs. And that's what I'm talking about there, is that stitch that goes forward 2, back 1, forward 2, back 1. It also, more of the fabric is in each stitch, and therefore is a sturdier stitch. The next couple that I'm going to be talking about are also ones where the confusion, I think, is caused by crossover from a different and similar craft, specifically with needlepoint. So in cross-stitching, we use some of the same stitches that are used in needlepoint, but a limited subset of them. So there's a stitch that is used pretty frequently in needlepoint and also used in hand sewing called a tent stitch. And because it looks the same on the front of the fabric as a half cross stitch, sometimes people say tent stitch when they mean half cross stitch. And on the face of the fabric, it looks pretty much the same, but the stitch is worked in a different way. And there are occasions where you really want to make sure that you use a tent stitch rather than a half cross stitch. Make sure that you check out my video on tent stitches and the differences between them for me to help explain that. But the short of it is that with a tent stitch, you're stitching kind of similarly to the way that you were with the back stitch, where you're going 2 stitches forward and 1 stitch back. So with each stitch, rather than like with the Danish method where you would go forward 1, down, we're going to actually go forward 2 squares during our return stitch, and then back 1 square during our facing stitch, so that the return stitch travels 2 squares on the back and the facing stitch only travels 1. This is really nice to do when you're working on things like canvas or linen, because it, again, holds more of the fabric in each stitch and is therefore a little bit sturdier. But you can see the difference between, like with this row of stitches here, I started out doing half stitches and then I switched to tent stitches partway through. And if you look at the back here, you can tell when I switched. These are all of my half cross stitches, and then these are all of my tent stitches. So again, it's using up a little bit more floss, but it's using up that floss in order to hold more of the fabric in each stitch, thus resulting in a sturdier stitch. And because it's crossing more of the threads of the weave in the fabric, when you're working with things like linen where the thread tend to move around inside the weave, the tent stitch is a sturdier and more consistent stitch. Now, almost everything that I learned about cross-stitch, I learned from online communities that I'm in, and it's an extremely valuable resource. In particular, the Caterpillar cross-stitch community is an extremely supportive and creative community that if you're not in there, you're missing out on it. So make sure that you join the Facebook group and follow the Instagram so that you can be a part of that community and expand your love of the craft. And this next one is another one where I believe that the needlepoint terminology has gotten muddled up with the cross-stitching terminology, resulting in confusion. And that's a stitch that is known in needlepoint as a petite pua, or it's a small dot, basically, a small point. And this is used to fill in an area within a needlepoint work with a finer stitch. So normally, like for instance, I'm stitching these over 2 threads of my even weave fabric. Again, I've done a tutorial on even weave to explain that terminology if you don't know what I mean by that. But instead of going over one piece, instead of going over one strand of the weave in the fabric, I'm going over 2 strands of the weave in the fabric. But if I wanted to make an area look particularly crisp and detailed, then I could use that petite pua method of stitching an area over 1. Now it requires more stitches because an over 2 stitch is going to take up 4 times as much space as an over 1 stitch. But with petite pua, what you would normally do is fill in an area with over 1 stitches in a project that is mostly over 2 otherwise, and you would use tent stitches for that, because on the fabrics that you can do this, again, the threads of the fabric can move and slip around against each other, and your thread can actually slip underneath the threads if you don't use that tent stitch. So if I do a handful of the little petite pua stitches here, then you can see that I can fill in that space, and where 2 full cross stitches would do it, it takes 8 petite pua stitches. So that's a technique for filling in an area and making it a little bit smoother. But it often gets confused with a different kind of cross stitch, which is a petite cross stitch. And a petite cross stitch is something that is used sometimes to create kind of a finer slope or a finer curve within cross stitch, because we're basically working with squares. Each little X makes a square. We're working with kind of pixelated art. But sometimes you want that ramp to be a little bit smoother, or sometimes you want that curve to be a little bit smoother. And so a designer will fill in some of those areas along that jagged edge that's created with, sometimes they'll use quarter stitches, sometimes they'll use 3/4 stitches, and sometimes they'll use petite stitches. And a petite stitch is basically a tiny little cross stitch that takes up 1/4 of that square. So it's something that you'll see only on more advanced designs probably. But if I were going to put one right next to a full cross stitch here for you to see, it would look like that. And so that can let us create kind of a more gradual slope on a line in a cross stitch, for instance. But that's the difference between those two, is a petite stitch is a small cross stitch taking up 1/4 as much space. Petite pua is a technique where you fill in an area with stitches that are 1/4 the size of the stitches that you're normally using in order to make it stand out and look smooth. And the other one is just a slight confusion that people have about the term blackwork. Now again, I made a video about some blackwork success tips quite recently, so you'll want to check that out. But blackwork is a technique of creating your pattern using, most frequently, repeating patterns of holbein stitch. Now some people will use backstitch for that if the back of it doesn't matter. But essentially you're just creating straight line stitches, and it's not really technically cross stitch. A lot of people who do cross stitch also do blackwork because we use the same fabric. We like that gridded out, even weaved fabric like Ada. But if you've got full cross stitches in there, it's usually not technically a blackwork pattern. But some people think it's blackwork if it just only uses black thread, or if it only uses a single color of thread. But blackwork is a specific term dating back to the 15th century, referring to stitches that are straight lines and creating repeating patterns, and it was originally created for reinforcing the hems and cuffs of clothing. But you can also do crimson work where you use red for that as well. But blackwork is not just a monochromatic stitch, it is actually a specific thing using either backstitch or holbein stitch. Now another one I have kind of a personal vested interest in, because before I started doing this, I didn't see a lot of people doing it, and I especially didn't see a lot of cross-stitch instructors talking about it, and that is the thing that I call stitching in the well. Now, as far as I know, I came up with the term for that because there wasn't really a name for it before. But I've seen a few people get a little bit confused about that, because there's a term from quilting called stitching in the ditch, and that has kind of crossed over and got muddled up with that term a little bit. And with stitching in the ditch, what you do is, like when you sew two pieces of fabric together normally, when you open them up, it creates this little kind of ravine in between the two pieces. And in quilting, if you put your quilt stitches right down that little ravine between those two pieces of fabric, that is known as stitching in the ditch. And so that was why I tried to use a slightly different term for the technique of stitching in the well, where I load my hoop with the fabric on the back side of it instead of on the front side of it. And again, check out my video on that for my explanation of why I prefer that and why I have converted a great many viewers to this technique. But again, the video says you're doing it wrong, but it's just a cheeky little joke. There's no wrong way to cross stitch. I'm a big believer in that. And another term that you'll sometimes hear misused that causes some communication troubles is railroading. Now, a lot of people use what is called the Danish method, and again, I've talked about that quite recently, to create even stitches and to make it a little bit easier to count and correct mistakes. When you use the Danish method, you wind up with these little vertical lines of stitches on the back, and they kind of look like railroad tracks. So when people hear the term railroading, sometimes they assume that what that means is using the Danish method. But railroading is actually a different technique, and I've made a video to cover that as well, that has you drive your needle between the two strands of your floss when you're making each stitch, so that it keeps them separated, keeps them from tangling, and helps you get neater stitches. And the last one is less about the meaning and more about the origins. We have a term that we use in cross-stitching and embroidery called ort. An ort is the little bits of thread that are left over, the little scraps after you trim each thread that you're working with. Now, I like to save mine because I do other fun crafts with them, like filling Christmas ornaments or stuffing a biscornu with it when I'm done with it. But ort is actually a Old or Middle English term from Anglo-Saxon that means scrap. And in fact, in like the 11th or 12th century, scraps of food, the word you would have used is ort for those little pieces. You give the orts to the dog. Now, because most of us are not familiar with the term ort, a few people have decided that it must be an acronym, and they've come up with old ratty thread or old recovered threads or something like that. But it really is just an old term that doesn't really get used for anything else anymore. But part of the reason I love this one is because of those backronyms, which is where you take a word and then you make up an acronym for it, either intentionally or unintentionally, in order to explain the origins of that word, which is known as folk etymology, where people have this story about where a word comes from, but it doesn't actually tie to the origins of the word. This is a pretty popular thing to do, especially with swear words. You probably know one of those folk etymologies and backronyms for maybe the worst swear word you can think of. It's not actually where the word comes from with any of those. So those are some of the words that I most frequently hear confused or misused within the cross-stitching community. What about you? Is there a word that you thought meant one thing and turned out to mean another, or that you've seen someone misuse within your own circles? You probably have your own thing you heard about what ort stood for, so I especially want to know those ones. Leave it in the comments for me. I collect folk etymologies. So other than that, I do want to thank you so much for watching. For Caterpillar Cross Stitch, my name is Ford, and I will see you next week.